Days in the Sun, a Journey to the West fanfiction written by Jukebox Draws, read by Jukebox Draws. Chapter 5, Soft. A quick note from the author, quote, I decided to keep the attempted kiss because I think it's important to note that Wukong still doesn't know the difference between romantic and platonic love. He believes that he is in love with Sanzong romantically, but he isn't. But he doesn't know that yet. End quote. It had been a week since Wukong saved Sanzong from the clutches of the Demon Bull Prince. The monk had been tending to the Monkey King, rubbing soothing treatments onto his arm. Wukong had become less bedridden also after the first few days. "Do you have a bathing tub?" Sanzong asked him. The Monkey King had managed to become even more dirty somehow, dried mud and blood crusting on his fur. He was beginning to stink, and Sanzong demanded he bathe or he wouldn't step foot in the bedroom again. "I have hot springs, about a mile up the mountain face in a private cave." Wukong stood and led the monk to the pools of steaming water. The cave had low ceilings covered in glowworms that lit up the darkness like 1,000 fireflies, giving the room a warm blue ambiance. Sanzong helped the Monkey King undress, keeping his eyes fixated on a nearby wall instead of on Wukong's body. The simian slipped into the warm water with a loud groan. The water immediately began to turn an ugly shade of copper from the dirt and blood being washed off his fur. The bubbles rising from the heated pool filtered away the gross water. Sanzong dipped a cloth into the pool and lathered a bar of lavender-scented soap. He brought the suds to the monkey's fur and began to scrub away the grime. He massaged his fingers into Wukong's scalp, scratching and scrubbing at the dried dirt. Wukong's fur puffed up. His breath hitched, and he let out a soft noise when Sanzong's hands brushed over the spot behind his ears at the nape of his neck. The monk froze. For a moment he thought he had scratched too hard and caused the king pain, but this was soon disproved as he felt Wukong's head lean back into his touch. "Don't stop," he whimpered, his eyes squeezed shut. Wukong was desperate for the monk's touch. After days of being cared for day and night by him, the monkey had never experienced such affection before, such soft touches. Now he yearned for it, craved it, needed it. Sanzong slowly continued to scratch and scrub at Wukong's head and shoulders, earning a series of noises from the king that were borderline overdramatic. Just how long had this creature gone without physical touch, the monk wondered. "Do you want me to brush your hair for you?" Sanzong took a comb out from his robe, carved from smooth wood and ingrained with jade and white pearl. He kept it for good luck, as the shopkeeper had told him when he bought it, but now he seemed he had use for it. Wukong nodded profusely, and the monk began to pull the comb through his hair. He met a few knots and tangles along the way, but they were dealt with in due time as Sanzong continued to work the teeth of the comb through the simian's fur. The Monkey King never wanted it to end, but of course it did, and he bit his lip to hold back a whine as the monk's hands pulled away from his head. "You should bathe too," Wukong suggested in an attempt to stay here with Sanzong for just a little longer. The monk blushed a bit at the thought of bathing with someone else, but the request seemed innocent enough, unlike the other few times the Monkey King had requested something of him. "Okay," he said softly. As he undressed, he became very aware of how much he indeed needed this bath. He sighed in relief as he sank into the water, keeping his undergarments on for the sake of modesty. Wukong chuckled. Humans and their silly standards held high in all the stupidest places, he thought. "Here, let me help." Wukong took a clean cloth from the basket Sanzong had brought. The monk stiffened as he felt the tips of the monkey's pointed fingernails on his back. His hand pressed further, a palm flat against his shoulder blade, and the monk quivered. He hadn't felt touch on his bare skin in so long. It seemed they both needed this. Wukong brought the cloth to Sanzong's back and began scrubbing gently. His other hand roamed over the soapy skin, pale, smooth, and soft. Delicate in every sense of the word. Wukong hadn't taken much interest in the monk's physical appearance before now. Now he was close, and Wukong could see him, truly see him, bare and raw in the chest-high blue water. The monk sighed softly as he felt the simian's hands trace over his shoulders, squeezing gently. Long fingers traced his collarbone and the dip of his neck, making sure to remove every bit of soot, ash, and dirt that dare impede the monk's perfect skin. Allowing his hands to explore, the monkey took great interest in the differences between himself and the human. Sanzong's upbringing had not exposed him to a lot of hardship the way Wukong's had. The human had seen less, and that was reflected in the lack of scars or blemishes on his skin. Wukong, on the other hand, was covered in marks, discoloration of the skin, and scars galore from battle or just carefree recklessness. It was fascinating. Sanzong noticed his fingers wrinkling a bit from spending too much time in the water, so he opted to get out quickly and dry himself. Wukong complained, of course, but got out as well. He slumped back to his bedroom once he was clothed and his wound properly dressed again. He could move his arm without too much pain now. Somehow the bath had helped. "Eat." The monk gently brought a spoon to Wukong's lips. The Monkey King let the monk feed him, not feeling particularly energetic enough to protest this pitiful display. He was being fed some sort of stew of vegetables and rice steamed in a warm broth. Wukong cringed at the savory taste, not used to eating anything other than his beloved sweet peaches. "I want peaches!" Wukong pouted like a toddler, demanding dessert before dinner. Sanzong raised an eyebrow. "When you finish this bowl, you can have a peach." "But I want one now!" Wukong growled, showing his teeth. Sanzong flinched back a bit at the monkey's raised voice. He suddenly remembered Guan Yin. "Don't talk to me like that," he narrowed his eyes. "And what are you gonna do about it?" Wukong grinned, thinking he had the monk beat. Suddenly, the golden fillet around his head began to tighten, and his temples began to throb as he felt the metal digging into his forehead. "Ow!" the Monkey King cried out, clutching at his head, attempting to rip the crown from around it, but the thing wouldn't budge. He writhed on the bed until the crown loosened again, and he let out a groan, rubbing at his temples. "I said don't talk to me like that!" Sanzong pouted again. Wukong glared at him before settling back onto the bed. "Who gave you that spell?" "Guan Yin." "You met Guan Yin?" "Yes." It was silent for a moment, until Wukong pulled the bowl into his lap with one arm and began to grumpily finish the remaining bits of veggies and broth. Sanzong smiled softly. "See, it's not so bad, is it? I know it's not what you want, but it's what your body needs to heal." The monk brought his hand to the simian's face and stroked his thumb over the hair on his temple, soothing the pain and making the Monkey King shiver. He bit his lip to hold back a whine. This monk truly had no idea what he did to Wukong. It wasn't fair. "You can't just eat peaches all the time. It's not good for you." Sanzong sat at the edge of the bed, continuing to stroke the copper fur. When the monk got up to leave, Wukong reached his hand up, dropping the spoon back into the bowl with a clatter. "Wait!" Wukong grabbed the monk's wrist. Sanzong stopped and turned his head back. "Please." The Monkey King slid his hand down, passing his fingers over Sanzong's palm to grip his hand. "Stay." "Okay." Sanzong sat back down. Wukong placed the bowl back on the bedside table, reaching his other hand to grip the monk's sleeve to pull him closer. Sanzong scooted closer a minute amount, barely ruffling the furs of the bed with his movements. "Come closer to me," the king pleaded. "Please?" Sanzong was shocked. Never once had he heard the king say please outside of a display of mockery. He got closer. Perhaps Guan Yin had been correct. "Closer." The monk obeyed. "Closer." Sanzong could feel Wukong's breath on his cheek. "Closer." Their lips were so close. Wukong closed his eyes and leaned forward. "No!" Sanzong pulled away as if he had been electrocuted. His sleeves ripped from the harsh grip of the Monkey King's nails. Wukong's fur spiked, and he felt his breath run short. Were you going to—" Sanzong's pale face was flushed a hot pink, and he pulled his robe over his mouth as if the simian were going to attempt to steal it again. Wukong's mood instantly soured, and he grimaced. Wasn't that what was done, when you felt this way about someone? He started before he screamed in pain, the golden fillet around his head tightening again. "Don't do that!" Sanzong wiped the tears from his face as he ran out of the room. Wukong slammed his head back against the pillow. Humans were incredibly dramatic, and their sense of boundaries made so little sense to him. He didn't understand. He wouldn't be surprised if the monk attempted to flee his island again in the morning. To be continued in Chapter 6.